What's up, guys? I'm back with another video. I know it's been quite a bit. I've been a little busy with work, and then also there's been quite a number of tournaments that I've been going to lately, trying to get in as much practice as possible ahead of the Hartford ARG, just trying to figure out what I'm going to be playing. Although now I think I have a pretty good idea. Now it just becomes a matter of refining it over the next month or so, and playing against what I think are the going to be the meta decks at Hartford. First things first, congratulations to my boy Ian Hill for taking the W in San Jose. I'm so glad that the tri-state area finally got something. The New York and Jersey guys are always, grinding it out. Same with the PA guys. So like to get somebody from this region of really strong players get a win, super proud. Going to be visiting Ian and Eric this upcoming weekend. I got to return some stuff that Eric left in my car in Virginia, but it's gonna be good to see the boys again, hang out, get to practice with them. So super excited about that. Also want to take just a quick second to address some of the complaints that I keep seeing on the Facebook group, specifically hashtag Justice for Danny. I mean, if you guys haven't seen it, you can probably go look it up on Dusty's Twitch, twitch.tv/kitchentablемeta, as well as the channel. I'm sure it'll come up at some point. But basically, the gist of it is there was some kind of crazy ruling that happened in Danny's game, and then also a point where his opponent, after he resolved a Zeno, shuffled his energy into like a pile along with all of his cards and almost combined it with his deck, and it was stopped, and then they used the video feed to rewind the game state and save it, and the result ended up causing Danny to eventually lose the match when otherwise he shouldn't. So I'm a little conflicted on that, because for those of you guys who do not know, at the ARG Circuit Series in Hartford in December, I did the same thing in Top Cut. The exact same thing, but I did not have the luxury of a camera, and I was basically, given the match loss. Like that game, I was given the game loss in game 3 for it, and that cost me the match. And eventually my teammate Joe Olheiser went on to win the whole thing. He split with Eric Hill. So yeah, like I don't know what else to say. I mean, sometimes judges get it wrong, but I don't know if I necessarily agree with it. What I don't agree with is the fact that everybody on the Facebook group is taking it out on players like Ian and the PPG guys and William himself, when it was, an error on the judge's part. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think you should invalidate the work of other players and all the time that they put in. They obviously deserve to be there in Top Cut. It's a long tournament. They are fatigued. Mistakes happen. But it's really not fair to say that because of the rulings of certain judges and you feel that Danny should have won the event because, the judges screwed him over and it should have been his win. You can't really say that, and it's really mean-spirited, I feel like, to kind of take it out on the other players in Top Cut. Just because of the rulings of a couple judges. So with that out of the way, I kind of want to now just go over some of the cards that have been previewed since the last time I made an update. I haven't really done any reaction videos because, like I said, I've been a little bit busy, and then also somebody summarized my thoughts pretty perfectly on the boards before, which is Tournament of Power so far feels like starter deck the set, and I really do mean that. Most of the cards I've seen so far are either underwhelming or completely pushed, like they're making them chase cards, which starts to feel like a starter deck, because the starter decks literally have like 2 or 3 crazy cards in them that you gotta have, and then the rest is very ho-hum. So yeah, that's just my opinion, but I just want to go over some of the stuff that I have seen. I'll go over the leaders and a couple of choice cards. So Vegeta, I am not a huge fan of this Vegeta here. It kind of, it doesn't feel like it does anything better than any of the previous red leaders we already have. If I'm trying to remember exactly what he did. Yeah, so you basically have to build around Warriors of Universe 7 for him to be effective. So, like, I'm just not a fan of any kind of deck that kind of constricts originality or deck building. If you know that, me as a person, like, I don't play things like Cell Chain because I just don't like having to conform to playing, or I should say Android leader, because I don't want to conform to having to play specific types of cards to make the deck work. Usually, that's not always the case. Sometimes I will do it if I find it to be pretty good, which is the case for this set actually. Then we have Kale here. I think Kale is actually quite good. She just feels like a different, like a red version of Broly, and instead of having to have one specific bad card in your deck to make the leader work, you now get to play a specific character to make the deck work instead. And luckily for us, that character is actually quite good. So I feel like Kale will see some play. I don't know how strong she will be, but I definitely think that Kale is a leader that has, you know, a lot of potential going forward. Skipping ahead, Majin Buu full of energy, I think is a quite good card as well, especially since he's one red. 25k, double strike and barrier, very difficult to get rid of. Barrier, as we go on, is just, it's too much. I feel like it's a keyword. I really think they're gonna have to find a way around it, or re-rule it so that there are ways around it, because we're slowly going to be approaching that point of being able to build the Dragon Ball equivalent of Bant Hexproof, which is just a bunch of cards that are literally have hexproof that you can't interact with, and it just beats down you. Then there's no way you can deal with it. Like already right now we have 3 or 4 good ones, with the release of BCC Goku coming up in a couple of weeks, as well as this set. It's looking like you're gonna have about maybe a dozen very strong barrier cards, which may be good or bad for the meta. I'm leaning more towards bad, because it'll just become a meta where once you fall behind on board, it'll be very difficult to come back from, since there is no way to deal with things. Obviously his effect, being able to choose a life to give him plus 5k, and you can do it multiple times to awaken based on when you drop this in the game. Really strong card, and just in general he's a much more splashable ape Vegeta, for those decks that don't want to try to play something like yellow. I mean, King Vegeta is already playable outside of apes. I've already proven that you can just play him in yellow just because he's generically good. So I expect this guy to also just be generically good and played in quite a number of decks. Hit, I actually really like this hit quite a bit. Being able to send a card to the warp, so you can kind of blink to set up your ability, your play for the 6-drop hit. Really strong. I expect this to see some play because Vados from set 1, the 5-drop that when you swing you look at the top 3 for an alien that costs 15 or less, that card is going to make a huge comeback because there's so many amazing targets in this set for that card. And, you know, I feel like most people are going to be trying to play Cell Chain next set, or play SS3, so they don't have access to Cold Bloodlust. So Hit, Lightning Fast Hit, can very easily make a surprise return to the format if SS3 is the prevalent deck, because he already is a leader that goes on low on life quite early, and he can't really stop Lightning Fast Hit. So I definitely think that this card has some potential. Also, it just completely outclasses the Tournament Pack 2 card, which I don't know why they did that, but yeah. So you could actually just run both and just, you know, get 8 hits, and it's just a solid card in general. Moving on, let's see. Oh, this card. Bold Super Saiyan 2 Caulifla. This is probably the best red card that was shown in the set, just because, if you guys remember on the Kitchen Table Meta live stream that I did the one time, I said that I like to file cards away if they're not immediately useful, or just make note of certain things on cards and see if it ever becomes relevant. I'm sure the cat's already out of the bag at this point, but Saiyan Teamwork Kaba, the green dash pack from set 3, says look at the top 10 for any Kale or Caulifla and put it in your hand. If you choose a Caulifla, you can play it for free. Now that's fine in the current format because the only Caulifla is a 2 cost, but I don't think they foresaw that you could get a 4 cost or a 5 cost or like a 7 cost with it. So you can get this Caulifla for 2 green energy, and then this card obviously looks at the top 7 for a Universe 6 character with 1500 or less and put it into play. So you can actually use this to get either, say, this Sister Attack Saiyan Caulifla here, or this Kale, or basically any number of other cards, which makes it quite strong. You know, I fully expect green-red Universe 6 to be a deck, or I should say green red aliens is probably more appropriate. I expect that to be a deck because, again, the 5-drop Vados just so strong, just because she can already get Saiyan Teamwork Kaba. The Saiyan Teamwork Kaba can get this bold Super Saiyan 2 Caulifla. This Super Saiyan Caulifla can get this hit, and you can just attack again with Vados, and then if you're just a complete savage, you can just get it again. So the potential to get 5 bodies in play for 5 energy, really, really, really strong. Especially if you're something like SS3 Goku, where you can get it on turn 4 and tap out for it and still be completely safe. Really, really powerful play. I expect it to see quite a bit of play with the Tournament Power set, unless something in the blue or yellow cards changes my opinion. So moving on to some other stuff that is interesting here. Let's see. This card, Strategies of Universe 7. This card, a lot of people think this card is broken. I don't know if I would necessarily agree with that, but this card I feel like has one of the highest skill caps of any card in this game, and it really shows format and matchup mastery. When you play Strategies of Universe 7, at key points like where your opponent would power spike, so like when I talk about power spike, if you remember in previous sets, Soul Striker would power spike at 5 energy. That means when he would hit 5 energy, he would hit his results, he could start hitting his Super Saiyan Gotenks and start chaining a bunch of cards. Like he would just, turn 5 was the turn that he got a lot of power. So in the current format that we're going into, Veggie-based decks, for example, power spike on turn 3 to 4. Because that's the turn when their Kales become live. So knowing when to play Strategies of Universe 7 ahead of the turn where your opponent power spikes to diminish that power spike, I think is really, really important, and will separate the best players from just the good ones or just the average ones. And then, of course, though, there's the other part where I have some reservations where you could just be a complete sack and just hit 3 of these back to back, and you just have Barrier on board for 3 turns for all your guys, and that just doesn't feel good at all. Lesson learned from this video should be that Barrier is not a good keyword, and probably will need to be reworked at some point for reasons I've detailed before, namely loss of interactivity and skill. Timekicker, I think this card's really cool. It is definitely not going to be used often for its ability to warp, especially since your leader has to be Universe 6. But it is definitely a really cool card, being able to blink one of your opponent's guys out of play until the end of turn, especially if it's like a harmful effect or it's something that may be comical, like if you were to Timekicker a Zeno, for example, after they Zeno you. That would be absolutely hysterical, because then you would be able to go into the next turn with a fully replenished hand, and you've actually depleted your opponent's field as well. So it kind of like throws the Zeno back on them. So Timekicker, really, really cool card design. I like to see cards like this, even if it's not necessarily, the best card. Son Goku, I'm super not a fan of this leader. I know a lot of people like it because it's Ultra Instinct, but I really just don't think that this Goku has much of a place in the metagame. He's got the whole, you cannot include non-Universe 7 cards in your deck. So far, the email ruling that's been out today says that you can play extra cards in the deck, but your battle cards can't be anything other than Universe 7 cards. And so far, everything I've seen from this set, there's nothing that makes me want to play Universe 7. Even the Ultra Instinct Goku that was shown, it's just, I don't think it's that good of a card. I really don't. I think that the previous Ultra Instinct is significantly better. I don't really see much of a value in playing this card, other than when it attacks a leader, it draws 1, and then it gets 5k power. Like, that's pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. But like, I feel like you could get more with other leaders. Then we move on to Brienne de Chateau. I think I'm saying that right. I'm terrible at pronouncing French names. But Brienne, I think, is the most interesting leader that has been shown so far out of all of the draft leaders, largely because Maiden Squadron is incredibly strong in my opinion, and I cannot understand for the life of me why other people don't think it's that good. I'll explain my reasoning in a minute. So when she attacks, you look at the top 2 cards of your deck. You choose one Maiden Squadron from among them, add it to your hand, then you replace the remaining on the bottom of your deck in any order. So that's already good because you're searching for the Maidens that you need anyway, 2 at a time. And if you notice, it doesn't shuffle them. They go to the bottom of the deck. So you're going to be sifting through the deck. So you're not, because you're not shuffling it, your chances of finding a Maiden get higher and higher pretty much every single time you whiff. So you will, eventually get to a point where you're just gonna be hitting Maiden after a couple of turns, which is pretty good. And then she still has the 4 less life, draw 2 cards, and then the backside where she becomes a Rebrand is really powerful, which it says activate main once per turn. If you have Kakunsa and Rosie in your battle area, you choose one of your opponent's battle cards and KO. So just for having her 2 teammates in play, every turn you get to kill something. That is strictly better than Perfect Cell. Perfect Cell's backside ability is already crazy because it has obviously the draw too, but it's every other turn it gets to KO something. This will every turn get to KO something, and then obviously it has when it attacks, draw a card. So I think that's really strong. Obviously, if Barrier ends up being a thing where we play the whole Barrier format, like I said, back with Majin Buu and BCC Goku and Kid Goku and Apes still being a thing, then maybe it won't be that strong. But I just think that the Maiden package in general is quite strong to begin with. Destructo Disc Krillin, I like this card quite a bit, except for the part where you have to be Universe 7. I do like more Self-Awakening cards, so I'm happy to see cards that allow you to take life to hand, especially for effects that are, pretty good. But I guess I'll say it now while we're in, starting going over some of the green cards in this set. I think that they need to find a different design space with green, and it'll become more apparent as we go through the rest of the green cards here. Green, just in general as a color, just seems to be based around good stuff mechanics like discarding cards from your hand and destroying cards, and when literally every single card in the color is just kills a thing or makes your opponent lose their hand, it doesn't make for very fun or interesting, gameplay or fun or interesting decks you can build. Green just becomes the color of, I just want to cram the really, broken stuff in it. So that's kind of why you're starting to see like green yellow take over, to start to take hold in the meta, because green is filled with all of the really dumb cards, and then yellow just has the extra cards, because right now green is only really missing broken extra cards, and it has everything else. So yeah, I would like to see going forward that they do something other than just play a guy, it kills something, because you'll start to see when we go through the rest of this, that's all it really is. Energy Guard Android 17, I think this card's pretty good. It's basically a 2-drop 20k blocker that switches to active mode at the end of every turn. This card is great for Android leaders, absolutely awesome. I mean, I know I said it's 315, but if you're playing Android leader, obviously it's 2 for 20. I would expect to see this replace most of the Android 17s, even in Cell Chain decks when it comes out, just because I found that when you cast the androids anyway, it's usually out of desperation, at least in Cell and Mira. You're doing it because you're trying desperately to finish off that one life. I think you would rather have your guy that's potentially trying to get there for one life be a blocker on your turn than just be a rested character, even though it has critical on your turn. So I think he is definitely going to be one of the cards that it will see more play from Tournament of Power. Can't really say the same for 18 because you basically have to be playing the Goku that I don't really like. So yeah. And then here we go. Here's the Maiden Squadron, which is, in my opinion, just a bit like I really do feel like it's deceptively pushed, because like I feel like the Maiden Squadron itself is just very strong, and it just doesn't seem like it. So first off, for 2 energy, you get Girl Warrior Brienne de Chateau. She's got Barrier, 10k. You look at top 7 for a Maiden Squadron and add it to your hand, then you shuffle your deck. So if you were playing Super Saiyan 3 Goku, you can play this on the first turn of the game. This card has Barrier, and will get you any one of the other pieces you may be missing. So let me see if I can just real fast jump up here and go over to strategy, show you what the other Rebrand does. So for those of you who have not seen it, here is Rebrand. This is the 5-drop super rare in the set. So you can, on turn 1 and SS3, play Brienne de Chateau, find this off of the top. This card is a 5-drop, 25k barrier, but it evolves for 3 over the barrier character that you already can't get rid of that you used to search this card. So your turn 2 play now becomes Maiden Squadron leader Rebrand, evolving off of your turn 1 play. When a card evolves into this card, choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards and KO it. So now you have a 25k barrier that KO'd a guy on turn 2. So it is a huge threat that really doesn't have any way to answer other than you have to attack it and kill it. So that is going to require some degree of cards from your opponent's hand to get rid of this card. And then you look at the other effect. When it attacks, if Kakunsa and Rosie are in play in your battle area, choose up to 2 battle cards from your opponent's hand and place them in the drop area. So the wording on this, choose up to 2 cards, that means you are randomly discarding 2 cards from your opponent's hand. So when this character attacks, if you have both of these in play, you are randomly discarding 2 cards from your opponent's hand. And I don't know about you, but like I just said, having a 25k barrier means that they're going to have to dedicate decent resources to try to remove this card from play, because it can really only be removed from play due to battle. The fact is this card also removes those same cards from hand. So if you fail to kill this, so you invest 2 cards into it, or 3 cards into it, and fail to kill the Rebrand, and she untaps, you're now losing 2 more cards. So you have effectively invested 5 cards or so to get rid of Rebrand. And I don't know about you, but very few decks can afford to invest 5 cards into it. And it's not like you can just cold bloodlust this, because you're going to have to deal with the effect every single turn as long as this body is on board. And that would be, you know, I know that you have to have Kakunsa and Rosie in play, but it is not as difficult as you guys seem to think. So I'll go on to those cards. So here's Kakunsa here, 4-drop, 20k critical, which is, you know, it's very whatever for a 4-drop. It's not like the most amazing thing. If Rebrand and Rosie are in play in your battle area, it gains dual attack. Okay, so if you have both of them in play, it is actually quite a good 4-drop. Otherwise, it is quite mediocre. So the most important thing to note here with Maiden Squadron Kakunsa is that it is a 0-cost 5k combo. Same thing here with Maiden Squadron Rosie. She is a 0-cost 5k combo. She is basically Android 17 from before, but she is a 4-drop. If you have Rebrand and Kakunsa in play in your battle mode, switch this card to active mode at the end of your turn, and it has blocker, so she can block things for you. So yeah, cards are very mediocre unless you have all 3 of them in play. And so now, I know most people are thinking that it's really slow. We have to 2-drop Rebrand, 3-drop, you know, possibly evolve into this Rebrand, 4 Kakunsa, 5 Rosie. But if you guys have already looked at it, we will just zip down here towards the end. Maiden Squadron is the 4-drop extra card. Activate main, choose up to 2 Maiden Squadron with an energy cost of 4 less in your drop area, and play them. So this card is an extra card, so there is no way to stop this card. So you just play it, and if they're in your discard pile, you just get them. Which, if you guys are paying attention to what I was saying before, with 0-cost 5k combos, at any point in the game that you have the Maiden Transformation, you just swing and you combo both of them for free, and then Maiden Transformation and immediately pick them back up. So SS3 can turn 1 Brienne, turn 2 Rebrand, turn 3 Maiden Transformation, and rip 2 cards out of your opponent's hand. It is incredibly, incredibly powerful. And then Brienne de Chateau, the leader herself, can do pretty much the same exact line of play, only a turn slower. But the trade-off is that Rebrand actually, the leader, will get more cards removed from play over time due to her leader ability, and this card here, Maiden Charge. Maiden Charge is really, really, really powerful. It says pay 1, negate the attack, then if your leader is Universe 2, you may place 1 card from your hand in the drop area. If you do so, your opponent chooses one of their battle cards and KOs it. So this card is honestly a better version of the Speedy Surprise attack that the androids already have. Sure, your opponent gets to choose it, but if their board is only barrier characters, so for example, like if they have, because it happens quite often to me in Zumafu, where I'll have like Ultra Instinct Goku in play, and then like 3 barrier characters, so I have to choose the Ultra Instinct. So based on the type of deck your opponent is playing, Maiden Charge, the effect is actually really, really potent. And if people are just going to stock their decks with barrier characters, you're basically going to be getting their finishers most of the time when you cast this card. So really, really strong there. Going through some of the other cards that were shown here. Um, let's see. I actually, Zarbuto, yeah, he's the one that looks at the top 3 for a Universe 2 character, which all of the Maiden Squadron are. So if you're playing Rebrand, I see this guy being pretty good. If you're playing SS3 Goku, I don't think you need him. But obviously, you know, it can't hurt. People already play Bridge to the Future Trunks in SS3, so there's some merit there. Again, I haven't really, this is all just initial opinions on how I feel about things. I might get in there and play it and find something out entirely. That's why testing is kind of important. Let's see. Who else is there? Jimize, I'm not sure if I would actually want to play this card. I understand it makes your Maiden cost 2 less to play it. But it can't reduce it past 0, so only the first copy is really good. I mean, obviously he has the really cool ability to blink himself out, use the instant transmission to put himself into the warp, and then you get him back next turn, which I think is pretty cool. But again, I just don't know if I would want to do it because I'm not hard casting some of these cards. Like, I guess Rebrand for 3 from my hand when I can't do the evolve trigger, I guess is his best use. But otherwise, you're evolving Rebrand for 2. And my preferred method of playing Kakunsa and Rosie every single time is off of the Henshin, the Maiden Transformation extra card. So, yeah, I just don't really know if I would want to play this card. I know I see a lot of people who are interested in Maiden Squadron playing this card. I don't really think you need it. I think there's better things you could probably be doing with it, but maybe 1 or 2 of. I don't know. Again, we have to test it, figure it out. Vikal, obviously, this is your super combo if you're playing Rebrand. Zirloin. This card is actually quite good. So he's double strike, 4 costs, activating once per turn. Choose one card in your life and add it to your hand. If your leader is Universe 2, choose one of your opponent's battle cards and KO it. So, yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. You can just activate this card even if you're not. So this is another self-flip engine card, and he's just 20k double strike. But what you guys may not have noticed is this card is already a card we have, but it's just strictly better. This is Furious Yell Vegeta, but you get the card to hand. And I already felt that Furious Yell Vegeta was a pretty underrated card, so having a card that helps you self-awaken and KOs a guy and puts a card in your hand every turn, pretty strong card. Definitely one of the better things I feel like from this set so far. Plum, I know it's Prum here, but it's Plum basically. Just 15k barrier, just a beater. I mean, he's probably going to see play just for the fact that he play combos with this guy Hermilla, the sniper, which says once per turn, activating once per turn. When you play this card, if you have Plum in your battle area, choose one of your opponent's battle cards with 5 or less and KO it. So yeah, this is what I was talking about this, you know, a little bit earlier. Every card in green just seems to KO things. We have the Krillin that KOs things. We have the Zerloin that KOs things. We have the Rebrand that KOs things. We have now this guy who KOs things. So yeah, why is every card in green just removal? Not every card in black in Magic is removal. There are other things that they could be doing, and it makes me worry a little bit for the design team. I'm wondering if they are starting to run out of ideas, or this was just a rush set where they're like, "Hey, green's a removal set, a removal color. Let's just every card in green, got to make it remove." So yeah, just you can see with the design here, Ganos. When a card evolves in this card, choose one of your opponent's battle cards and KO it. So another KO effect. Then your opponent chooses one card in their hand and places in the drop area. So again, a discard effect. So yeah, Trickster Ganos. When you play this card, choose one of your opponent's battle cards with energy cost of 4 or less or KO it. So you play the 3-drop, KO a guy, evolve into the 4-drop or the 5-drop, I should say, KO a guy and discard a card. So yeah, see what I mean? Kawaii Keycaster. I actually really like this card. You know, obviously it's the green combo into play that we've been so desperately missing. And obviously now you can get it in foil, so maybe Tien had some purpose after all. But I actually also really like this card's art. It reminds me of some of the early 90s anime. It's very Slayers-esque, for those of you who watch that show. Kind of reminds me of some of the characters in Slayers. So yeah, that basically, I think, hits everything in green and red that I really wanted to talk about. So let me know what you guys think so far of these Tournament of Power spoilers that we've had. Do you actually agree with me? Do you think that green's getting a little bit stale? Do you think that the Maiden Squadron is as good as I'm thinking it is? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys in the next video.